got a whole nother perspective on that 50-50 thing, the way Iyanla broke it down. Let's talk about it. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Siobhan Patrice, and we're going to be reviewing and I'm going to give commentary to Iyanla Fix My Life, the final season, episode 2, titled, My Marriage is None of Your Business. So this episode is about a married couple who have started a business together, and they are having a hard time managing that business in addition to keeping their marriage solid. The episode is about Deidre, who's 35 years old, and her husband Idris, who is 46 and who is in a second marriage. The episode starts out with them both being blindfolded as soon as they come in the door. First Deidre, and then she's led back to the kitchen area where Iyanla positions her in front of a set of doors. Then you see Idris come in, and he too is led back to the kitchen and also positioned in front of some doors. Idris has the opportunity to choose a door first. The doors, it was 3 doors in front of them, and the first door read, Married to the Woman of My Dreams. The second door read, Made my bed so I have to lie in it. And the third door read, I married a nightmare and don't know how to get out. So Idris chose door number 2, which was I made my bed so I have to lie in it. Then you see Iyanla unblindfold Deidre and tell her to choose a door and to pick, honestly, which door that she feel best represents where she is in her marriage. And the options to her doors were, number 1, I married my knight in shining armor. The second door read, I married a man that wanted me because I wanted to be chosen. And then the third door read, If Only You Knew. And so Deidre chose door number 3, which was If Only You Knew. So then she brought them both on the same side, and she showed first Deidre Idris' door, the door that he chose. And she asked her, was she surprised by that door, the door that he chose? And she said no, she was familiar with that mindset about the marriage because her father had that same mindset in the marriage with her mother. And so however hurtful it was, that she was familiar to that. And Iyanla asked, well, he could have chose door number 1, which was I married the woman of my dreams. However, he also could have chose I married a nightmare and don't know how to get out of it. And so they both are given lanyards to as to the door that they chose, and those lanyards with the same that matched their chosen door was a representation of how they show up to each other in the marriage, in addition to how they show up in public. Because a lot of people don't believe that, you carry what you're going through around on you. A lot of times I've been to married couples' houses or have been out on at functions with married couples, and without a word being mumbled, I can tell when something is not quite right. So then the episode goes on where Iyanla has them both sitting in the living room area on the couch, and she asks them their love story. And so Deidre goes on to tell how they met each other at work. I think she was eating some strawberries or something, and he approached her. She felt that it was very easy to talk to him, and they had a good time hanging out together, and they actually moved in together, or he moved in with her after 3 months of meeting, and then 6 months later they were married. Iyanla then asked about their children and how many children did they have, and she stated they had 11 children. And Iyanla, kind of looked, and then she explained that whereas she had 2 children coming into the marriage, and then she has 2 children with him, and he had 7 children coming into the marriage, and again, he had been married prior to her. So they together had 11 children, and they spoke about the business and how the business got started. Iyanla asked who dream was supported, and Deidre said she was supporting her husband's dream, and she asked about a business plan, and they kind of had some back and forth, but there was no business plan actually drawn up. He thought she was going to do it. She felt that he should have did it. She had reminded him several times over about it. However, it was not done. The business was just started. Then he went on to say that right after the business got started, she actually was pregnant at the time and was having some challenges at work and wanted to leave her job and then come on and start working full-time with him in the business. And although he didn't agree with that and didn't think it was a good idea, he didn't disagree with it and just allowed it to happen. And then Iyanla, made him acknowledge how that really made him feel, which was that he felt disrespected and not heard because, he wasn't really given a real choice. He could say, no, stay at work and, be a asshole of a husband, or he can, do what he did, which was say nothing. And now, the marriage is in shambles. So when they get upstairs for their first exercise, Iyanla take the pail full of lemons that she had given him for the choice he made, and she threw the lemons on the bed. And the way the bed was made up, half of the bed was it was like money as a representation of the business that was the comforter, and on the other half of the bed it was like roses or something romantic, and that represented their marriage. And she asked them both, Deidre first, this bed represents you all's marriage, and so we're trying to figure out who's saving what. And so she asked her, are you here to save the business or save the marriage? And she chose the marriage, so she told her to go sit on that side of the bed. Then she asked Idris, is he here to save the business or the marriage? And he also said the marriage, and she just, spoke about how downstairs he couldn't even answer why he wanted to stay in the marriage. Matter of fact, he didn't answer. And so for him to then upstairs choose the marriage was like a different mindset. And so she kind of wanted to get to the bottom of that. And she actually asked Deidre about it. And Deidre was like, I'm not surprised because he acts like that in the marriage at home. He goes on and, we had a real bad spat one time, and I actually said I would leave. I'm tired of this. I'm not going through. And yes, a divorce can happen. And then he turned right around and he cried and, said he didn't want a divorce. And so they then stayed together. So she was used to the going back and forth with that. So while they are in the bedroom, that represents the marriage, Iyanla starts to ask them a series of questions. So then Iyanla has them, as they're both sitting down on the save the marriage side of the bed, she tells them that she's going to now teach them how to have an intimate conversation about what's really going on and how a marriage without conversations could topple a marriage, and how it can cause resentment, anger, and just cause havoc in the marriage, because there are a lot of questions that aren't being asked, and therefore it's no questions, it's just a bunch of assumptions running through the marriage. So she asked him, what does his card represent to him? His card stated, I don't respect you as a business partner. And he went on to explain that as a business partner, anytime he asks something of her or for her to do something, it's turned right back around on him. And then she asked Deidre to respond, and Deidre was like, I feel the same way. I don't respect you as a business partner because you don't handle the business. I mean, she brought up how the taxes haven't been filed in 5 years. And then he went on to say, well, that's because you were supposed to do them. And she was like, no, you never said, you never told me about doing the taxes. And then he was like, well, I assumed that you knew that, the taxes needed to be done, so why not do them? And so Iyanla was just trying to explain to them, because they are not speaking and having effective communication with each other, this is the reason why the business is floundering and your marriage is failing. And then it went on for Deidre to read her card, and her card read, I feel voiceless in the marriage. And then she asked her to explain what that means for her. She then says that if she was not busy making excuses to stay in this marriage, she would probably just leave the marriage. And that she feels unheard in the marriage about a lot of things that she believes are challenges that's going on. And when she go to talk to him about it, he always says how she's tired. And she kind of made a statement, I guess, about him being late. Or she felt that he's lazy and he's always just want to sleep. And she's at home, 24/7 raising kids. And when he comes in, he want to go to bed. And he's in bed, for the most part. And he went on to explain, I'm working 12 hours a day. So I work 12 hours, I come home and go to sleep. And his analogy is that I'm going out here, I'm the only one that's working, so he feel he deserves a right to, if I'm bringing home all the bacon, then I expect to, get the rest that I need, so then I can then turn around and be productive again the next day. And she felt, no, when you come home, you need to try to help me, take care of this household and take care of the kids. And as a matter of fact, your older kids just laying around doing nothing. And then, she kind of started going in on him, and Iyanla stops her. And then she asked her to sit in a chair that was she was sitting in, and Iyanla got up and sat beside Idris. And then she went on to explain to Deidre, as long as you are just going in at him, he's not hearing anything. And so she gave her an example where if you just change the tone and of how you are communicating with him, then it will then allow him to hear you. And so Iyanla goes on, and she uses the power of touch, which I find a lot of men are into that. If you touch them, be it on their arm or their hand or on their leg while you're talking to them, it kind of brings a calm to the situation. So Iyanla kind of grabs onto Idris' arm, and she's kind of stroking him and rubbing him, and just talking softly and just kind of making statements as to how she feels about what's going on, instead of using statements that are what's considered digging statements. So when you are trying to get your point across to somebody, it's easier to tell them, to make it about you, to say, I feel this way, I think we can probably do it better, versus you need to, because using the word you is accusatory and can come off with a negative connotation. So just kind of speaking in love to him and speaking life into whatever the conversation is surrounding, would just grant her a better result. She goes on to explain to them that the foundation of the business is not sturdy. And so, therefore, they have to do the work to shore up the foundation of the business. And that starts with being honest and having an honest conversation with one another. And she asked him, had you ever said to your wife, I don't want you to be a part of this business? And he said no. And she said, okay, tell her. And then he had to express to his wife he didn't want her to be a part of the business anymore. And she actually said she didn't want to be a part of the business anymore. So that just went to show how they were both in a situation that didn't necessarily have to be. However, because there had been a lack of communication, not even effective communication, but communication period around that part of the business and around that aspect of their marriage, that they were both suffering instead of just communicating with each other and, giving a sense of freedom to one another, or given through communication, a sense of freedom can be given. A lot of times we hold on or we don't say something thinking we are sparing the person, when actually you can just speak it, and a lot of times it frees the person. And he made his bed, and so he has to lie in it. She told him that, a lot of that is that you don't even respect yourself. So therefore, it's hard for you to respect her role in this business, or even her as your wife in this marriage. And it starts with you in the way that you show up and carry yourself, that actually sets the tone of the household and what that's supposed to be like. And she explains to him, you need to hear her in love so y'all can build this thing up, because the marriage is in shambles because the business is failing. And that nothing is going to change for them if they don't, create a new mindset about how the structure is supposed to be and how they communicate with one another. Because right now they are using their words to destroy and tear the marriage down, versus using words to give life to both the marriage and or build the business. She goes on to say that, they need to show up better for themselves in the marriage. That Deidre, you need to, put your fancy little negligee on when he do come home after working 12 hours. And she mentioned about, you need to put your perfume in the deepest crevices of your breasts, and then dare him to come smell it. And how it's things that they both can do to try to, make the marriage better outside of the business, because it should be two separate things that's going on. And she tells him, and how are you showing up? What do you have to offer? And he was just kind of sitting there, and she asked Deidre to step out. And she told him the reasoning for having her step out, because she never would want to emasculate him in front of his wife. And she asked him, who are you accountable to? It seems like you are just kind of flailing in the wind. And he said himself. He's accountable to himself. And, he didn't really have, anybody that, or mentor or anything around him. And she told him, well, that was the problem. A man who only has himself to answer to is a man who don't even have an answer. She then asked him about his spiritual, thought process. And he said he was a Muslim. And she asked him, was he at least practicing? And he said no. And then she's like, you a real danger to yourself. You don't have anybody, on your level to be accounted to, nor are you accountable to a higher level being. And so therefore you are in trouble, and you need to, make this right. Start practicing. You need to, go and get with a group of men or your friends or, some brothers to help shore you up. You need the support. And she talks to them, and Deidre first, about her father being an addict, and that how the disappointment that she felt from her father throughout her life is now transferring over to how she feels about her husband. And that because that has been a pattern for her, instead of choosing differently in mindset about how her marriage should look versus how the marriage she grew up in looked, she continued to just stay in a mindset of, he disappointed me, therefore I attracted a man, and I feel everything he is doing is disappointing me. So she went on to say that Idris should have known that her dad was a addict, and he should also, be of the mindset or the know that all women marry their fathers. And I don't know if I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think um, maybe there may be some aspects about their dad that they marry. I don't know, maybe not. I mean, what do you all think? I know I didn't marry my dad. So, I don't know. I can't say that's always the case. However, more times than not, that seems to be the case in most marriages, or so they say. I don't know. However, she goes on to tell her, but you can't automatically put that on him. That was then, that was your dad, and this is your husband. And Deidre was like, I don't really even want to see him as a failure. That's the problem, and that's the challenge that I'm having in this marriage, because I believe him to be better than my dad. However, it's just so much going on, I don't feel that way. Tell both of them their homework for the night was to write a letter to each other, and that she wanted that to represent a new vision of their marriage. And that letter need to be in the form of a prayer. So he needs to write a prayer about his wife, and she needs to write a prayer about her husband. And so then you see the next morning where Deidre comes downstairs, Iyanla is at the kitchen table, and she tells her to put on some garments that she had on the table, and it was a bonnet and a robe. And Iyanla went on to tell her to look at herself in the mirror. This is how you showing up, and you need to do better. And so she goes on to tell her, I want to support you in any way I can during this process for you to show up and your husband see a better version of his wife. And that 14-year-old hairstyle she got going on, she doesn't even look like an adult, more or less somebody's wife. And so she told her, next time your husband see you, you're going to look like a grown-ass woman. And that a lot of her actions are nonverbal, but they still say, I don't trust you. I feel that you are a disappointment to me. And so that she needs to know that that's what's happening, and she needs to do something different. So then Iyanla has Idris to meet her into the living room area where they sit down, and she asked him about his night and what were some of the main takeaways that he got out of the experience from the day before. And he said that he really, thought about how he was not grounded in his religion, and how he knows that needs to come back and needs to happen for him. And Iyanla goes on to agree with him to say that no matter the religion, you need to be grounded in your spirituality, whatever that is, because that solidifies the foundation of who you are, especially by him being a fatherless son.
Dear God, I thank you for my wife. She is precious to me. I pray that you bless her, spirit, mind, and body, for who she is and for all the things that she does for our family.
So he goes on to start to read the prayer that he wrote for his wife. And then the prayer was a very touching prayer. So much so he got a little emotional. But he goes on to say how thankful he is for his wife and how he prayed for blessings for her and how grateful and thankful that, she was his wife, his friend, and his lover, and how, he was thankful for the asset she had been to the family. And then Iyanla told him, she's like, she asked him, was he okay? Because, like I said, he had started getting emotional. And she told him, it's amazing to have your husband pray for you in a manner that gets him emotional about it. To a woman, that could be sexy. Maybe you need to kind of bring this to your marriage or show this side of, yourself to your wife, how you emotionally feel about her, even if it's in prayer. And that's something they can do together at night. And she asked him about, um, could he possibly do better, learning what he learned the day before. And he was like, well, no, I mean, I didn't even know she felt that way. I didn't know it was things I'm doing wrong. And Iyanla said something that I thought was kind of powerful. It reminded me of a conversation that I was having with a mentor of mine. And she said, it's not for her, meaning your wife, to tell you how to be a husband. It was for your mother to do that. And with me raising a man child, my son is now 22, and my husband passed when my son was 12. And so he pretty much had to get manhood from mentors that had placed in his life. My dad was a big role in my son's life, and my brother. However, he has been raised by his mother. So with my mentor, I was having a conversation with him about how now that, my son is about to graduate from college and go on into the world, I feel like, it's another pivot for me. I went from when he was in high school, I led from the front up to high school. And then now, okay, so then he went to college and I tried to lead from the backside, sort of. And now that he was finishing college and he was becoming a young man on his own, that I almost kind of feel like, am I still supposed to be trying to lead him at all? Or, do I still, lead from the back and not from the side at all? It's just, do I just lead from the back? And he went on to explain to me, what he said to me, I mean, it just blessed my soul so much because I didn't even think about that. So he told me not to think of it as leading him at all, but to think of it as me telling him through scenarios or just in conversations how, as a man, a woman appreciates this. Or as a woman, if she show up like this, then that means this. And so what that would do would give him some insight as he go on in relationships, or as he go on in life, as far as him being in a relationship, that he will know, when something goes on, he can always refer back to a conversation that we had. And he said, wow, my mom kind of warned me about that. Or in relation to him just showing up as a man in a relationship. Wow, yeah, I just remember my mom saying that, she appreciated this about a man, or she appreciated this about, being in a marriage, and, how she would want a man for herself to show up. And therefore, he will always have that in the back of his mind. And so then he will then try to show up in that same manner, because a son always wants to please his mom. And so that's important for him. So that was a good conversation I had with my mentor. So to hear Iyanla say that it's not the job of a wife to teach her husband how to be a man, I just was like, wow, that I don't know. That's just a whole new perspective. Not that, maybe I didn't think like that before, or that's not necessarily have been a thought process for people, but so often women do. They trying to be the wife and the mother. And they are, instead of just loving their husbands, they are also trying to raise their husband in love. And you can't do that. You just need to love him and, be prayerful that his mama already raised him. And so, what y'all think? I don't know. That's just something that I like nuggets. So that was something that just kind of spoke to my soul. And so it made me go a little deeper and thought when she talked to him about that. She then went on to talk to him about him being a young man, a teenager having babies. And therefore, he never really had a chance to grow up because he started having babies. And so that stunted his maturation process into manhood, because at this point you having these babies, now you are just trying to survive, to provide for them. And so how he needs to acknowledge that and recognize that he still has some maturing to do into manhood. And although he has the physical body of a man and he is operating and showing up in the persona of a man, that he is still just a teenager and a young man at heart, because he missed some steps by him having kids so young. And then she told him she had a surprise, and then out walks Deidre, and she is beautiful. I mean, not that she wasn't a beautiful young lady before, but Iyanla was right. The way that she had her hair styled, she was showing up like teenager. She wasn't showing up like, wow, this is my grown sexy wife. It was nothing sexy, about how she was presenting herself in her marriage. And so she had her hair done, she had her makeup on, she had a little sexy shirt on, and he just had a big old grin across his face. It was really cute. And she came out and he sat beside her, and they was all nuzzled up, and even their body language had even changed, just from the day before. It was like, the experience thus far, in addition to now her showing up, like the sexy person that he probably initially met, meaning the aura that she was giving out, and the energy she was giving out, the way she looked at that moment, kind of, it was almost like sparked something about her that he kind of remembered. And so he expressed that non-verbally, just by, he put his hand around her and they was nuzzled up. I just thought it was a good look. And Iyanla asked her, how do you feel? And she said, I feel awesome. I feel great. And she said, and you look great. And this is the way you need to show up in your marriage, not like a teenager. So Iyanla goes on to talk with both of them and tells them that, okay, so now we're going to work on some goals for this marriage that you can take with you when you leave these experiences. And then she asked them, what are some, goals, or what are some things that they know they need to show up as instead of the way they had been showing up, in the marriage. And she said, Deidre said that the marriage needs to show up as a union, needs to show up as a team, and for the kids needs to show up as a healthy relationship. And so Iyanla was like, okay, so you on it. And if y'all are doing this, y'all ain't no time, to be bickering and biting each other head off, arguing about, little stuff. And so she goes on to talk about the finances of the marriage. And she talked about how when it comes to finances, there is one solution that really works. A lot of people, might have some knowledge around it, but they don't necessarily understand the concept of it. And I happen to agree because prior to her breaking it down the way she did, my perspective on the 50-50 thing was not that. The way she broke it down was that both parties in the marriage should come in putting equally into the financial the financial pot. That they both should put 50% of their income into one joint account, and then that particular account should handle all of the finances. And so it doesn't make a difference who makes more because we are both are contributing equally, meaning a percentage. So there is no feeling around, she's lacking, he's lacking, or I'm bringing more to the table, because you're not. You are putting in 50% and he's putting in 50%. Now, how the pot is spent is a conversation between the two people, and so that may differ, for each case. But the contribution both should be 50% of what you bring home and 50% what your spouse bring home, and that should go into the pot. And it could be some concessions, depending on the conversation that you have or the agreement you make in your marriage. It may be 60-40 instead of 50-50, but of course that's done with the conversation. But if you use the 50-50 concept and the way she explained it, there will be no feeling of unfairness in the marriage, and that one person is coming in or coming up short in the marriage because they are not making equal contributions. And I thought that was powerful. Like I said, I know about, heard of, and the 50-50 concept. Some people agree with that. Some people don't. But I really appreciate her breaking it down, and my willingness to hear it a different way. And this time when I heard it, it made more sense. And so equal contribution sounds like it is a win. So she goes on to tell them, instead of nitpicking and, clawing and fussing with each other, that they need to do better with that, and how a marriage is never destroyed from the outside. A marriage can only be destroyed from within, and how it's an internal breakdown. While there may be external factors, but it starts from within the bond of the marriage. So then she takes them and escorts them back into the kitchen, where now you just see two doors, and one door says all in and then one door says all out. And she asked them which door do they now choose, and they both chose all in. And so the episode was good. Make sure there's awareness around that, sometimes you still need to show him what he meant, to remind him how he got there. And I guess that's what I took away from that. So I thank you so much. I'm Siobhan Patrice. If you had not already, please thumbs up this video, subscribe, also comment. Tell me what you thought about the video. And until next time, I love you to life. Life is a journey. Choose yourself and enjoy the ride.